It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Shelby Houghton with 2NURFM Hunter News. A 28-year-old man is facing Newcastle local court today, charged with committing credit card fraud in the Hunter. It's alleged the Russian man used fraudulent credit cards to withdraw money from a number of ATMs in the Lake Macquarie and Port Stephens areas. Joanne Elliott from police headquarters says the man was arrested at an ATM in Belmont on Friday afternoon.
The man's been charged with 19 counts of steal with property suspected being proceeds of crime. These offences allegedly occurred between June and October, and the man is a Russian national who's in Australia on an expired tourist visa.
Despite a total fire ban yesterday, it's been revealed 4 Hunter fire stations were either closed or had unstaffed firefighting equipment. The Fire Brigade Employees Union are drawing attention to the closures as an example of how budget cuts are hurting our local emergency services. President Darren Sullivan says there's been over $64 million in cuts across the state's fire and rescue services since 2012.
On the back of that, we've seen slow erosion of fire service in New South Wales, and it's getting worse, and it can only get worse because the budget cuts are getting worse every year for us. And so we're seeing these closures, these fire stations and fire trucks being taken offline, and it's becoming a game of Russian roulette.
Police have raided the Gladiators Bikie Clubhouse in Maitland, leading to the arrest of one man. Investigators from Strikeforce Raptor, which targets outlaw motorcycle gangs, joined Central Hunter Police in an operation spanning numerous premises. The raids targeted areas including the Gladiators Horseshoe Bend Clubhouse, as well as a property on Bob's Farm. Planning issues in the Newcastle CBD may be subject to a state government inquiry. Newcastle councillor and Lord Mayoral candidate Therese Doyle says the current state environmental planning policy for the city is illegitimate and has made a submission to the government calling for a freeze on all new developments under the latest policy. Councillor Doyle says it's not a case of holding back progress in the city.
It's not slowing down development at all in Newcastle. What it's doing is saying that there should be due process, and that due process has not been followed. That's why there needs to be a stop to these developments.
Lake Macquarie's infrastructure, coastal environment and residents' health are under increasing threat from climate change. Its feared permanent inundation, flooding, drought and bushfires are among many results of climate change that could cost $150 million to fix. Mayor Jodie Harrison says council is working on ways to reduce the impact of climate change.
Council, in addition to writing to the Prime Minister to get this discussed at G20, also is going through an adaptation planning process. We've got a trial adaptation planning process occurring now at Mark's Point to work with our community on how we best deal with issues relating to climate change.
Hunter residents who are passionate about local issues are being encouraged to volunteer for the Regional Development Australia committees. The roles would best suit community members with the skills and experience to lead the community and solve issues in the business, education and industry areas. Paterson MP Bob Baldwin says it's time for some new faces to have their say.
The federal government has called for expressions of interest for people throughout New South Wales to put their names forward for consideration for chair, deputy chair and other committee members for the regional development organisations. Not singling out any one organisation, but it's time for a renewal and review across the board.
In finance, the All Ords is down 21 points at 54.20 and $1 Australian is buying 88.16 US cents. Updating sport, Newcastle Jets head coach Phil Stubbins aims to improve the team's effectiveness in the front third and final execution ahead of this weekend's clash against Perth Glory. Right back Scott Neville could be unavailable to face his former club after sustaining a groin injury, in which case Jacob Pepper would drop back from his holding midfield role. After living in Dallas for 10 years competing in the PGA and Web.com tours, Newcastle golfer Nathan Green has returned home. However, the 39-year-old is far from hanging up his shoes, heading to Kalgoorlie on Thursday with fellow Novocastrian James Niddies to compete in the Western Australian PGA. They'll be joined by rookie golfers Toronto's Cal O'Reilly and Jamie Hook from Charlestown. And more than 150 junior basketballers from across the region will descend on Port Macquarie this weekend for the Seaside Classic Tournament. 2NURFM News Time is 2:05.
If you look at comfort purely from the perspective of your back pocket, here's some welcome news for the rest.